Miles Adiemi had asked for the corner table by habit, the one that put his back to the wall and gave him a clear line to the door. 30 years of hospital shifts had made him a man who needed to see the room. He was a cardiologist, not a paranoid man, but he had learned early that the details other people let slide were the ones that mattered most. So when the woman and the little girl stepped through the front door of Ardeen that Friday evening, Miles noticed them before the maitre d' did. The woman was tall, her posture exact, dressed in a deep green coat that had been chosen with care. The girl beside her was small, too small for 8, Miles thought, though he would not have known her age yet. She wore a white dress with small embroidered flowers at the collar and patent leather shoes that caught the candlelight, and she was looking around the room the way children look at a place they have been imagining for a long time. The maitre d' was a trim man in his mid-50s named Clifton Barr. Miles had seen him work the floor before. He had a way of sorting arrivals in the first 3 seconds, a quick read of clothes, of manner, of what he decided a person was worth, and then his face arranged itself accordingly. Miles had noticed it and said nothing, the way you notice weather. Clifton noticed the woman and the girl. His face arranged itself. He took them to the table near the service corridor. Miles set down his water glass. The table by the corridor was not a table Ardeen advertised. It was tucked at the back of the dining room where the kitchen doors swung open on a regular rhythm, sending cold air and noise across whoever sat there. The linens were the same as everywhere else, the candle the same narrow taper, but the table was meant for parties the restaurant could not quite place, the reservation called in late, the walk-in they had to accommodate. On a Friday evening at Ardeen, with the west wall tables candlelit and the window seat overlooking the courtyard fountain glowing the way the little girl had clearly expected the whole room to glow, the corridor table was an insult so practiced it had become invisible to the people giving it. The woman sat. The girl sat across from her and looked out toward the window table, the one with the unobstructed view of the courtyard, where a white couple in their 60s were talking without looking at each other, at ease the way people are at ease in rooms that were built for them. Miles watched the girl look at that table, and then look at her mother, and then look down at her lap. He picked up his menu and did not read it. The woman flagged a passing server. The server said he would send someone. No one came. The table beside theirs, another white couple, younger, seated after them, had their bread and their water within 4 minutes. Miles counted. He was a man who had spent 30 years counting the minutes between a patient's first complaint and the moment someone in the system took it seriously. He knew what delay looked like when it was not about logistics. 12 minutes after they were seated, the girl lifted her face to her mother and said something Miles could not quite hear. The mother leaned in. The girl spoke again, and this time her voice carried, not because she raised it, but because the table beside her had gone quiet. "Mama, can't we sit by the window? I picked that one. I showed you on the computer." The mother, whose name Miles did not yet know, reached across and covered her daughter's hand with her own. She said something gentle and private, and then she raised her head and looked for Clifton Barr. He was already moving toward them. Miles saw him clock the girl's voice, the other table's attention, moving the way men move when they want to manage a situation before it becomes one. "Is there a concern?" Clifton said. He said it pleasantly enough, but the word concern had a weight to it, the way that word sometimes does in certain mouths. "We have a reservation," the woman said. Her voice was steady and clear. "Under Okafor. I confirmed it yesterday. I requested the window table. My daughter has been looking forward to this dinner for some time." She paused. "I'd like to know why we were seated here." Clifton clasped his hands at his waist. "The west wall tables are spoken for this evening." "I see." The woman, Okafor, Miles repeated to himself, looked at Clifton for a moment in a way that was not angry, not loud, not anything that could be called a scene. She looked at him the way a woman looks at something she has already decided she understands. "I'd like to see the reservation book, please." Miles set his menu flat on the table. Something shifted in Clifton's expression, a flicker, gone quickly. "Our reservation system is internal." "I'm sure it is," Mrs. Okafor said. "I'd still like to see it." The dining room had not gone silent. People were still eating, still talking. But the table nearest Miles's had stopped their conversation in that particular way where you are pretending not to listen, which is its own kind of listening. 2 servers near the bar had gone still. Clifton excused himself. He returned in 3 minutes with a leather-bound folio that Miles suspected was produced for exactly this kind of moment, authoritative-looking, conclusive-seeming. He opened it and turned it to face her. His finger landed on the Okafor reservation, 7 p.m., party of 2, birthday notation in the remarks column. Miles could read it from where he sat. He could also see what Clifton did not address. Beneath the name, in the same remarks column, were 4 words in a different hand: West Wall, please, F.R. Mrs. Okafor saw it too. She looked at those 4 words, then looked up at Clifton. She did not point. She did not raise her voice. She simply waited, and that waiting was worse than anything she could have said aloud, because it made Clifton's silence the answer. The girl was watching a candle flame. She was very composed for an 8-year-old, Miles thought, the kind of composure you don't come by naturally, the kind that gets trained into a child by a parent who has had to be composed in a great many rooms that did not expect to make space for them. Her face was thin. Her wrists on the table were thin. She was wearing her best dress and her good shoes, and she was looking at a candle, and Miles felt something move through his chest that he recognized. He was a cardiologist, after all, as the specific ache of a thing that cannot be medicated. "I'll speak to the manager," Mrs. Okafor said. Clifton began to say that the manager was occupied, which was when the front door opened and a woman walked in who was not a customer. She was in her late 40s, dark-haired, carrying a leather folio of her own, dressed for an office rather than a dinner. She had the look of a person who owns the room she enters, not arrogance, something quieter than arrogance. The ease of responsibility carried a long time. She caught the eye of the server at the bar and gave a small nod, and the server's posture changed immediately. Patricia Solano. Miles did not know her name yet either, but he would. She had nearly passed the corridor table when she slowed. Her eyes moved to the reservation folio still open on the table, and then to the woman sitting across from it, and then, Miles was watching closely enough to see it, to the name at the top of the page. She stopped. "Okafor," she said. Not a question. Her voice had changed. "Mrs. Okafor" looked up. "Yes." Patricia Solano looked at Clifton Barr for one long moment. Whatever passed between them in that moment was not loud. It was, Miles thought, the most efficient form of communication he had ever witnessed, a single look from someone who understood exactly what had happened, to someone who had just understood that she understood. "Mrs. Okafor," Patricia said, and she came forward and extended her hand. "I am Patricia Solano. I own Ardeen. And I want to begin by saying that I am very sorry." The girl looked up from the candle. "Your husband invested in this restaurant 15 years ago," Patricia said. Her voice was measured, careful, weighted with something real. "He believed in us before we had any reason to believe in ourselves. His name is on a plaque in my office, and it should mean more than it apparently has tonight." She did not look at Clifton again. "The West Wall table is yours. It has been yours since the reservation was made." There was a notation. "I saw it," Mrs. Okafor said. Patricia nodded once. "I'll take care of it myself." She turned toward the girl, and her voice shifted, not condescending, not loud, the particular register of an adult who knows how to speak to a child who is listening carefully. "What's your name?" The girl considered her with that measured gaze. "Amara." "Amara," Patricia said. "Happy birthday. I'd like to show you to your table, if that's all right." Amara looked at her mother. Her mother gave one small nod. The girl stood up. Miles watched them cross the room, the owner of Ardeen and the thin girl in the white dress with the embroidered flowers, walking toward the West Wall table with the courtyard window, the candlelight falling across the fountain outside. He watched the couple who had been sitting there receive a quiet word from a server and gather their drinks and move, graciously, to another table, without any fuss, the way people move when the right thing is being done and they know it. He watched Amara reach the window table and put her hand flat on the white cloth and look outside at the fountain and the lights, and he saw her face change. It was not a dramatic change. It was small. The tightness around her eyes eased. Her shoulders, which had been held carefully since the moment she walked in, let go slightly. She looked at the fountain for a long moment, and then she looked at her mother, and she smiled. Miles realized he had been holding his breath. He let it go. Behind him, one of the nearby tables began talking again, quietly, and then the room returned to itself, the clink of glass, the low conversation, the rhythm of an evening at Ardeen. But it was not quite the same room it had been 20 minutes earlier. Something had shifted in the way rooms shift when they have been made to see something they almost let slide, and when they have been given the grace to do right. Clifton Bar was not on the floor for the rest of the evening. Miles noted this without satisfaction. A different server, warm, unhurried, who checked in 3 times before the first course, took care of Amara and her mother. The kitchen sent out a small cake near the end of the meal, unprompted, with a single candle. Miles saw Amara look at it, and then look at her mother, and say something he couldn't hear, and her mother laughed, a real laugh, the private kind, and leaned over and kissed the top of her daughter's head. He asked for his check not long after. His food had been fine. He had eaten perhaps half of it. When the server brought the check, Miles added a note at the bottom of the receipt, below his signature, *, the family at the window table tonight, please ensure the restaurant's management is aware of the full account of this evening. It should be in the record, *. It was the most he could do, and he knew it, and he did it anyway. He put on his coat and walked out past the west wall table. He did not slow. But he glanced as he passed, the way you glance at something you want to remember, and saw Amara with her chin in one hand and the other pressed to the glass, watching the courtyard fountain in the dark, the candle burning beside her, her mother across the table reading the dessert menu with a pair of reading glasses she'd pulled from her purse. The ordinary extraordinary sight of 2 people, safe in a good room, being given the evening that was always theirs. He stepped out into the night air and stood on the sidewalk for a moment. In the 30 years he had been a cardiologist, Miles had learned that the heart was not a metaphor. It was a muscle, specific, measurable, capable of being broken in ways that could be read on a monitor and in ways that could not. What he had watched tonight was not readable on any monitor he owned. But he knew what it was. He flagged a cab and went home, and later, when he tried to describe the evening to his wife, he found he could not do it properly, not the green coat, not the patent leather shoes, not the fountain and the candle and the girl's hand on the glass, and so he said only that he had seen something he would not forget, and that the city had done the right thing, in the end, for a little girl who had asked for nothing more than a window. The following week, Patricia Solano presented a revised conduct and service standard to Ardeen's board. The review was unanimous. The policy was changed. Amara Okafor turned 8 years old at a candlelit table overlooking the courtyard, her white dress with the embroidered flowers bright against the dark window, her mother beside her. That was her wish. And the room gave it to her.